So you've just got into 3D printing and you've been having a blast printing models you found on MakerWorld or Thangs. However, you wish you could make small changes to turn these models into something like keychains, for example, but you don't have much 3D modeling experience, then you're in the right place. Because in today's video, I'm going to show you how simple it is to add positive and negative parts in your slicer to turn these models into something that you like. But before that, if you're new here, hi there, I'm Matt, and I've been 3D printing for nearly 2 years now. And on this channel, I'll be showing you lots of tips and tutorials for improving your 3D printing knowledge and experience. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So once you're in your slicer, in my case I'm using Bambu Studio, and you've found a model you want to modify. In this case, I've got this cute little egg model, which I actually made myself. But as you can see, it's just a solid model right now. It's nothing interesting about it. We might want to turn it into a keychain, for example. So in order to add both positive and negative parts with the model highlighted, you right click. You can see options here for add parts and negative parts. So it's the same shapes are available. So you can add a cube, a cylinder, sphere. However, for this purpose, if you want to add a keychain hole, the best option is a torus shape. So if you add a torus shape as a negative part, you can see it then adds this torus to your build plate. And as you can see in the objects tab, it's here as an additional part to your model. If you click on the whole egg clicker, it highlights everything. If you click on them individually, it highlights the individual parts of the model. So once you've added the part, if you right click on it, you can then center it, which is how I would do it. So if I undo that, and then if you accidentally have got the whole thing highlighted and click center, then obviously center the whole thing. Yes, with it centered, you can now move it around if you want. For example, in this case, I want the keychain hole to be at the top. So using the move tool, you can move it in the Z direction, and then you can rotate it too. So using the rotate tool, I just want to rotate it so it's facing me like that. Keep moving it until you're happy where it is. So the default size is unnecessary. You can scale it down to around 75%, and most keychains will still fit pretty easily. And then you can keep moving it until you're happy with it. So for example, if I slice this plate, you'll now see it has the negative part cut out. So you've now successfully turned it into a keychain. If you prefer hooks rather than holes in your keychains, you can use a positive part instead. So you don't have to delete this and add another one. You can right click on the negative part in the objects tab here. And if you see change type here, you can change it to another part type. So you can change it to a positive part here and then click OK. As you can see, it's now a positive part. So now the size will definitely be overkill for a keychain hook. So if you want to adjust it to 50%, for example, and then you might want to move it down again, something like that. If you slice that, you can see the positive part. I personally prefer negative parts for keychains, but personal preference, obviously. If I undo again to turn it back to a negative part, you might be wondering if there's a way to actually combine the parts to make it easier so you don't accidentally move anything around. And there is. So when you've got a model that has multiple sub-parts with the whole model highlighted, you should see this option here for mesh boolean or boolean. I never know how to say it. And if you click on that, you can see you've got these three options. One is union, which, as the name suggests, combines two parts together. One is intersection, which cuts everything besides the overlapping parts. And the other is subtraction, which subtracts one part from the other. So if we're wanting to make the keychain hole permanent on the model, the mode we'd need is subtraction. However, you can see in this case, because the torus has been inserted as a negative part, an error pops up when I try to execute this Boolean operation. So essentially what you need to do is first turn the torus into a positive part. So you can only do this subtraction with positive parts, not with negative parts, obviously. So now when you go into the subtraction operation of mesh boolean, and you've got the main model on the left side and the model you want to subtract on the right side, and you click execute, then wait for it to load, you can now see that the keychain hole has been embedded into the model itself. So you can see it without having to slice it. And you can also see in the objects tab, there is no longer two subparts, it's just one model now. So this can be useful if you want to export this model as a single STL, if you want to upload it somewhere like MakerWorld so you don't have parts that can be moved around by other people. And obviously if you slice it, you can see the hole is there as expected. Something else you can do is add another model as a part or a negative part. And a great example of this is to turn things into a fidget clicker. For instance, I managed to turn this model into a clicker like this. So for this, you will need an extra model file. So on MakerWorld, you can find this model, which I'll leave in the description below. Essentially, this contains the negative parts for the top and bottom part of a clicker to turn your models into a fidget clicker. So you'll have to download that first, and then you can add these as negative parts to your model. However, if you've got a model that's in one piece like this, you will first need to cut the model in half. So in your slicer with the model highlighted, you see this cut tool here, or you can press C on your keyboard, and that brings up the cut here. So by default, it cuts directly in the middle. You can move it up and down if you want. If I move it slightly so it doesn't cut any of the pattern on the edge, You can choose whether you want to keep both objects as well, so you can just keep the top part or just the bottom part, if you want to place the parts on the plane of the cut or not. So if you click Perform Cut, you can see it's cut the model in half into A and B. So with the bottom half selected, you can add the clicker part as a negative part. So in this case, I'm going to add the bottom part like this, and then I can center it. And then essentially what you want to do is move it until it's just sticking out like that. So if I slice it, you can now see the cutout for the bottom part of the clicker. If I do the same for the top part, so if I center this first, then load in a negative part. This time it's the top part of the clicker with the little cross cutout, and center that. If they're both centered, you won't need to move this up and down because they'll be exactly equal to the build plate. So if I slice that now, you can see it has the cutout of the clicker part. And as you can see, I might accidentally move one of the parts without taking the negative part with it. So as I showed earlier, this is where you might want to combine the parts. So first I have to convert both of them to positive parts instead. Click on Change Type and change it to Part. And then with the whole of each model selected, go into the Mesh Boolean and the Subtraction tab. Make sure the models are the right side and the right way around. Then Execute. And as you can see, the cutout is there permanently now. And I'll do the same on the other one. There you go. This way I won't accidentally move anything around like I previously did, so it's just easier, especially when you're exporting or if you want to upload your own models to MakeWorld. So obviously just to confirm, slice it and just check everything's okay. And it looks good. So this is how you can successfully turn something into both a keychain and a fidget clicker at the same time. Or you also might have found other models on MakeWorld which allow you to add negative or positive parts to things. For example, I've seen models to make your own slime fidgets like these ones. I haven't shown that here, but I will leave a link to a model in the description. And I also mentioned earlier that you can turn things into fridge magnets. So in this case, you probably wouldn't use this as a fridge magnet, but just to show you, so if I center this, the best part you would probably want to add for a fridge magnet is a disc. So you add a disc and then center it. Depending on what magnet size you're using, you can scale it. So if you're using a 8x2mm round magnet, for example, so if I turn off uniform scale, I set this to 8.1 just to give it a bit of clearance, then set that to 2.1. You will need to move this now because I scaled it. So move it till it's just sticking out the bottom of the model. So if I slice that, I now have a magnet hole at the bottom. So you can add these to your model to make your own fridge magnets too, which I did with this Umbreon fridge magnet. I added this as a negative part in my slicer and then just glued a magnet in, and it works really well. So I actually find these kinds of things like keychain holes and fridge magnets are better to add in your slicer rather than in your modeling software, such as Fusion 360, for example. And this is because you can adjust the size of them on the fly, so you can delete and change them if you want, which makes it a lot easier and more customizable instead of having it baked into the model when you export it. So that was how you can use simple positive and negative parts in your slicer to modify models you found online, or even your own models. Let me know in the comments below if you found this useful and if you'll be using it in future projects. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!